while my claim here in my thought, in my mark my words, I truly believe this is what's going to happen. They are going to give credit to the coronavirus vaccines that are coming to market right now for the coming decline. And I mean that. Science has already shown us that we will get through this. Yes, there are people falling sick. Yes, this is a little bit harsher of a virus, it seems. All right? I can recognize that. Statistics can recognize that. But I'm telling you, they are going to claim the vaccine causes the decline, which is already going to be coming, even if there was no vaccine. And the reality is right now, we may see the decline without the large, nationwide, substantial numbers of people getting the vaccine, because there's so many healthcare workers right now. And thank God they're healthcare workers, not thank God that it's a healthcare worker that is falling victim or falling ill or getting in an emergency situation or being injured by the COVID vaccines. That's not what I'm thankful for. I'm thankful that it is in a healthcare setting, in an emergency department, at a hospital, where they can administer immediately emergency medicine like epinephrine and things like that, or steroids, to drum down, suppress the inflammatory anaphylactic reactions that are taking place that could have taken the lives of these nurses across the U.S. Multiple occurring. Already Chicago, a hospital in Chicago, has discontinued or they are delaying their vaccine rollout because of multiple healthcare workers falling terribly ill and suffering anaphylaxis from the Pfizer coronavirus vaccine, whether they even get it to the nation. And trust me, the majority of people aren't going to take it. Already it's close to 50% of the Caucasian Americans are not going to take it. But that's the group with the highest number willing and saying they want to take it. The African American population is like, I believe one statistic was less than 20% said they would want to take it, and even less for other ethnicities. But they will say that the vaccine, no matter what number gets it, I bet, is what leads to the decline. But again, this study right here in front of you, longitudinal active sampling for respiratory viral infections across age groups. Ironically, it was published in February of 2019. European PubMed, I believe it was in 2019, February, in May 2019 on pubmed.gov. Reference this study and look at the data. Look at the data, all right? Ashley, if you have the image on me, not on the screen right now, this goes from October, so the fall of 2016, until the spring of 2018. I'm just saying it's ironic that they studied all these infectious diseases, all these viral respiratory illnesses. They included rhinovirus, influenza, they included RSV, and coronavirus is included in this. And they found that coronavirus was one of the number one causes of respiratory illness, including pneumonia at times. Now that's in other research studies. They didn't talk about the number going to and succumbing to developing pneumonia in this study. But if you actually study these respiratory viral illnesses, coronaviruses, rhinoviruses are more commonly found in the respiratory tracts of pneumonia patients than influenza is. Even prior to this year. So they knew October, November, December is when coronaviruses, red line is coronaviruses. They knew it was going to spike and then fall. They said they started to discover it in December in the US, but the reality is healthcare workers, friends of mine have already said they were seeing spikes. And again, I'm not saying that this isn't a harsher, more severe respiratory tract virus than years past. But they already knew it was going to be here. So folks, they knew coronavirus circulates like this. They knew all they needed to do was start testing for it. And by testing for it, if something's already there, it's going to look like it's skyrocketing when in fact it's been there the whole time and a lot of people have had it. They knew it would rise, they knew it would decline, and exactly what it did in the United States and almost every other nation around the world, there was an increase, a spike, and then a decline. Many countries did nothing, basically, like Haiti and others, did nothing. No masks, no vaccine, it declined. And then it plateaued through the summer and it stayed relatively low. But again, the case rates throughout the summer are deceptive in themselves, because case rates, when you have a faulty PCR test, a test that gives you so many false positives that it makes it look like the cases are still way higher than they normally are. Studies have actually been published, and if you can reference me through thewilddoc.com, you can find the peer-reviewed literature that I'm referencing for you, okay? But the PCR rates, false positive rates of PCRs for SARS coronaviruses was roughly 6 to 7%, and that's the average we were seeing throughout the summer months. So, what did they find in 2017, the fall of 2017 to the spring of 2018? They saw the exact same thing again. Coronavirus rates skyrocket and peaking in December and January. So they knew it would peak and possibly peak a little bit later, depending on weather conditions and other factors will play a part in when exactly we see those peaks. But they occur primarily, they are winter illnesses, just like influenza is a winter illness. A fall and winter illness, coronavirus spikes. So they are going to use this information to their agenda, their ability. And I understand this could be conspiracy theory, but this is me asking a critical question. If we know this is the normal trajectory, this is a normal occurrence of coronaviruses to go up in the fall and then spike in the winter and then to go down roughly before springtime. If we know that already from science published less than a year before, why aren't the experts referencing this and saying, we're going to get through this and it will decline on its own no matter what? Because that is what coronaviruses are shown to do. And I know the skeptics are going to say, but this is a different coronavirus. But it showed us already through the early winter or the late winter in 2020, in the spring and summer in 2020, and now we are seeing it, the exact same trend. So folks, this is what we're seeing in the U.S. right now. We're seeing, okay, summer months, relatively low case rates, and then case rates are now skyrocketing in what? Beginning in October, November, December, peaking. They are starting to peak. Now this may be the false peak, like if you're hiking and you see a peak and you get to that peak and all of a sudden blocked by that initial peak is a second peak. We may have to face multiple peaks just like they did in the 2016 to 17 winter months. Multiple peaks, but it does peak and it will decline. It had multiple peaks, but it had a major peak and then a minor peak, but then it still declined. Without a vaccine, without masking, with doing nothing, it is a normal trend of nature. All right? So we're reaching that peak. Mark my words. But this is where they're going to start that vaccine. All right? But I'm going to give you a little historical reference here. Because they've done it before, they're going to do it again. Mark my words. And mothers who want to do the best possible thing they can to protect their children against dying from an illness, an infectious disease, and that's why you select to utilize vaccines with the belief given to you through what I'm going to show you is a lie, a deceptive lie, that vaccines cause the decline of measles, mumps, rubella, infectious disease, mortality, all declined. We caused it. We saved lives. We prevented illness and death with these vaccines. That's what they tell you. That's what they lead you believe. And because you love your children, you take those statements, maybe that theory, and you say, I'm going to take a vaccine. I'm going to give it to my children because I want them safe and protected from dying from an infectious illness. And it's your love that they're using against your children. Because if they would show you this, the stress and fear that mothers have, the fear they have of losing their child to an infectious illness should decline substantially with evidence and information. Your fear should at least be decreased by this. So watch. Let's just look through the Journal of American Medical Association. This is infectious disease mortality trends in the United States from 1900 until 2014 roughly. All right? This is our national data. This is government statistics, peer-reviewed scientific evidence of the decline in infectious illnesses. The decline in infectious illnesses is that bottom line. That's highlighting just infectious illnesses. The other two, the darkest line, is all-cause mortality. Non-infectious causes is the darker orange line. The light tan line, all right, that is infectious disease. Look at the decline from 1900 until roughly 1950. That's what they say. Overall infectious disease mortality rates have leveled off since 1950. We've seen less or no decline since 1950. So let's just use common sense and say, when did we start vaccinating nationwide childhood immunization schedules? When did we start that? The first vaccine, you can put it on the screen, Ashley.
I cut it up there a while.
Awesome. The first vaccine was 1948. That was the DTP vaccine. All right? And Lancet, multiple journals have already detailed out how the whooping cough vaccine did not cause the decline in whooping cough. That it was already occurring, and this is mortality, not illness rates or diagnosis rates. They did not cause the decline in death rates. The vaccines did not. All right? So right there, the decline had already occurred. But the deceptive lie they give parents, the deceptive lie that they give people is they say this. They say, hey, look at this. Back here, they don't tell you when they started vaccinating, because that would clue you into using your common sense brain to say, if that's when we started vaccinating, but the decline had already occurred, then how did the vaccine cause the decline that had already occurred? Something can't cause something if the implementation of that strategy came after the decline had already occurred. That's common sense. That is science right there, folks. The decline occurred before vaccines were being used. Right there it is. But they say, before vaccines, look at how many people, again, they cover that up, look at how many people were dying. This was the first immunization on the childhood schedule, 1948. And then after implementation of that vaccine, the disease rate stops declining like it was before. And I can reiterate, because 1955 was polio. But even with the polio vaccine, after the polio vaccine, you see a slight increase in infectious disease mortality. That is overall all infections. All right? What about the next vaccine, which one of which was the MMR vaccine, which was implemented in 1963, which actually not the MMR, it was just the measles vaccine in 1963. Do you see a huge decline? No, you might see a slight decline there, but again, it still levels off. It basically does nothing. It increases after we started to implement the pneumonia vaccines and influenza vaccines in 1977, especially for the elderly. And look, this is when we implement all these vaccines. And with each and every vaccine, and I could go on and on with tons more vaccines that have been implemented over these years, but I'm not going to do it right now. For time's sake, just know all the other vaccines have come later on. Did we see huge declines in all-cause infectious disease mortality? No, we have not. And here is the issue. Let me show you. I'm going to go back to the dates here on the graph, but here is the problem. If we were to say that it's 0 people dying, basically 0% of deaths from infectious disease versus 100%, okay, of the people that are actually going to die from pneumonia, okay? And we'll just put a P for pneumonia, we'll put an I for influenza, and now we got a C for coronavirus. But remember, the original study I showed you, guess what they found? They found that rhinovirus is more associated with pneumonia than influenza was. It was one of the most prevalent viruses in the nasal cavities, the airways of people suffering in the ICUs with pneumonia. But they don't test for that. They don't care to test for that. Why? Because the reality is, when it comes down to it, it doesn't matter which virus is causing 100% of the people who are going to die that year from respiratory viral illnesses, pneumonia, influenza, coronavirus, and we could go on. We could go with rhinovirus. We could go with RSV. Para-influenza. We could go on and on. All of these viruses and many others, in fact, there are hundreds, if not thousands. They said there are hundreds of rhinoviruses. There's like 100-some rhinoviruses. There are many different unknown, we'll put 50 maybe, of coronaviruses on there. You know, we got flu A, B, and we got different strains of the A and different strains of the B, and we got the H1N1. So we got like 5, but there's actually more influenza viruses than that. But all of these viruses and these bacteria that can cause pneumonia, pneumococcal bacteria, guess what? They cause and end up accumulating up to 100% of the people who are going to die. Even if we cross off and we completely eliminate coronavirus, what causes the 100% of people who are going to die that year from infectious respiratory viruses succumbing to pneumonia is their susceptibilities, not these viruses. Because all of these viruses are the straw that breaks the camel's back to one person or another. So even if coronaviruses may be making up this much. They may be making up 70% right now of the total mortality from pneumonia right now, or that's what they're classifying, when in actuality rhinoviruses are more likely to be found in the nasal cavities of people suffering with pneumonia. Even if we eliminate that, even if we eliminate coronaviruses, then rhinoviruses become the next virus to take up that 70%. Or maybe it's RSV takes a little bit of it. Or para-influenza takes a few more. Or influenza takes a bunch more. Or other pneumococcal bacteria take even more. We're still going to have the 100% of people who are going to die in that year from these viruses that will circulate, that will mutate, that will come about in the future. We will have them, and more people will die unless we take care of the susceptibilities. If we don't fix the susceptibilities, the obesity, the diabetics, the autoimmune conditions, the vitamin D deficiencies, the nutritional deficiencies, the unclean water in different countries, if we don't take care of those, we will still see 100% of the people who are going to die from infectious diseases die. That is exactly why the focus on vaccines, with more vaccines, no more decline in infectious disease death rates. That is why vaccines are not saving lives. And give you one more example. This is from the CDC's own website. This is how they lie to you. This is how they are deceptive. Okay? You will see that they give you a graph on the incidence of hepatitis A by year in the United States from 2006 to 2016. Oh, wow. Great. Now we know what the vaccine did, supposedly. All right, when did they implement the vaccine? Well, they implemented the vaccine in 2006. 2006 is when they implemented and they added it to the schedule of routine vaccinations for children. So why don't we just go to the NIH, their adjusted ambulatory care visits, the hospital discharges, how many people are going into the hospital due to hepatitis A. You see a decline from 1979, and you see it at its lowest point roughly 1990, 1994. Now, why did it spike there? 1994, and again, it was added to the schedule in 2006, but it was licensed in 1994 and used in healthcare workers. We actually saw a slight increase in hepatitis A cases in hospitals following the licensing of the Hep A vaccine. And I believe I may need to make a correction, which is 1995 possibly, all right? But 2006. So they don't show you all of this on the CDC website because, again, humans who have common sense would say, what caused this huge decline before a vaccine was even available? And why are you only showing me way over here, only the very year you add the vaccine to the childhood schedule? Why? It was already going down. So all they do is show you there it was already declining, and they make it appear as if the vaccine caused the decline. So going forward, this is research, folks. This is science. Why don't they use this? Why didn't they tell everybody? Yeah, they said, and Bill Gates, oh, the second wave is going to be even worse. Yeah, because you're doing massive testing. And now everybody that's in the hospital, even if hospital care workers who do the billing and coding have already reached out to me and told me that they will have patients they're coding for, that they're doing the billing processes for the hospitals around the U.S. The patients can have confirmed influenza, but because they can classify patients as being COVID patients off of symptoms, and the symptoms of influenza and COVID overlap so much because they're acute respiratory viral illnesses, they classify them as COVID off of their symptoms, but yet they can test positive for influenza, but they're not an influenza case. And in fact, they can be billed for both and get more money because of the bonuses they get for COVID patients. They can test positive for influenza, negative for COVID, but be classified COVID according to their symptomatology classification of COVID, and they get more money for the hospitals. This is what they're going to do, folks. We are seeing, just like we did every year, what science had already shown us was going to happen with coronaviruses. It goes up in peaks in December, January, and it will decline headed into the spring. And they will vaccinate now and vaccinate a few more in the coming months. And we will watch it decline like it did every single other year. Whether it was a vaccine here or not, it's going to decline. Because that's what coronaviruses are proven to do. But they will give credit where credit is not due. They will give credit to the vaccine. So folks, I'm going to put it and draw it out. And I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to say this. You know, I was explaining this to a teacher, patient of mine, a teacher, wonderful, intelligent lady, capable of critical thinking.
Can you do it in the black?
That's what you need. What?
Can you do it in the black?
It doesn't work in the red? Okay. Yeah, I can do it in the red. The black. I wanted to do it in the red, but yeah, black works better. Okay. So, they have already proven that we see steady increases November, December, it may spike. And it's going to spike, and it may spike a few times. It may spike even more, because that's what it's shown to do in the past. But every year it's shown to decline. It will decline. But because they're going to vaccinate, horrible drawing, right? And if you're going to vaccinate, you need to take the cap off. But I don't know. You know, that's a good idea to do, especially if you're doing it on TV and you want people to believe that you're actually vaccinating somebody. But they're going to vaccinate somewhere in here. They've already started. All right? The decline was coming anyways. This is what they're going to give credit to. That's how it works, folks. That's how they've done it in the past. That's how they'll do it again. So, take the science. Use it. Be equipped with it. Educate your family and friends on it. Ask the critical questions why they aren't talking about all the science they did less than a year. Well, they did it throughout the 3 years prior to practicing for what was that event? Event 201, was it? With the Gates Foundation and different hospitals. I think it was Event 201. I forgot because I haven't talked about it for so long. But they had a mock simulation of a coronavirus after they had done the studies to show when coronavirus would spike.
Yes, Event 201.
Event 201. Just look it up. Folks, they know exactly what they're doing. I don't think, if people want to argue that the pharmaceutical and the scientists and the task force and these people are educated and informed, a lot of the people in the task force, they're not reading the science. A A lot of our health department directors, they're not reading the science because I've questioned them on the science. Not the task force members, that's what I plan to do. All right? And pray for God to intervene and those people to hear this, see this, and use common sense and say, why aren't we being given the science of how effective vitamin D is once people are already in the hospital and how it shortens the duration of the need for critical care or hospitalizations and even the number of ICU rates? Why aren't we implementing that? I asked the healthcare workers today that came in, 2 of them, are you guys giving vitamin D to the COVID patients that come in? No, it's not on any of the billing records. We are not giving vitamin D. They're ignoring science that could save lives. They're ignoring science that tells us what's going to happen. And why don't we just encourage people to do what's necessary to reduce the susceptibilities, thus reduce the death rate, and increase the lifespan of everybody? But my friend and teacher who I explained this to, she literally said, wow, that's exactly right, Darryl. I mean, at the moment, I don't care. I just want, however it's going to decline, I just want kids back in school because it is destroying our children. Directly from a teacher, folks. I had thought, with this massive increases, if these case rates are true, and these case rates are going skyrocketing up, if they were saying way back over here, that we needed to shut down hospitals and stop all elective procedures, with case rates like this, you'd think back here, when it got above these rates, when they thought they were needing to shut down hospitals and stop all elective procedures to have enough room, meanwhile, they are booking non-stop in the hospital for colonoscopies and all the elective procedures. And we're seeing case rates like this. If this was a deadly virus that they're trying to tell us it is it deadly for some? Yes, it can be the straw that breaks the camel's back, but what is deadly to the individual that succumbs to a coronavirus infection is the fact that they were malnourished, not having the right raw materials, the vitamin D, zinc, and other things. Many other vitamins are necessary. It's about not being malnourished in any one of the components that are necessary for a healthy immune system. But the science has clearly shown that zinc and vitamin D would save tens of thousands and millions of lives worldwide if we were to implement it, and if we had implemented it in the past, but they ignored the science and let people die. Or they weren't given the science. Or the people weren't, maybe Fauci just wasn't given the science. Because he doesn't write it. I'm sure he doesn't sit on PubMed every day and just look through the things. I mean, I've watched him talk through a PowerPoint that actually contradicted himself. But right there, why aren't they shutting down all elective procedures if this is what they tell us it is? That right there is proof enough that it's not what they're telling us and leading us to believe, and they are forcing people into a state of fear. Again, folks, you can text 786-808-1302.
Text TWD.
Text TWD,
To that
TWD as in the wild dot, to 786-808-1302. Again, that's 786-808-1302. If you text to that number, TWD, you can get a link to the website where all the scientific articles and links that I'm discussing and showing you, you'll have the exact scientific evidence you need to uphold this argument, these facts, and show people how they have deceived the world. Y'all, I love you. I appreciate you all. Please share this. Tag somebody. You got to tag a friend, a family member. Tag your wife, tag your friends, tag your children. I don't know why I have to say it like that. I saw some sort of funny, anyways. Love you all. I do. And I'm frustrated for about the lies. And I'm frustrated that more people aren't like, we'll call him Jim Bob. I don't know why I wanted to call him Jim Bob. It's not his real name. Why aren't we doing for patients more of what we're doing in this clinic? what we're doing in the Wellness Way, what we're doing in chiropractic offices around the nation, what we're doing in many functional medicine practices around the nation in reducing susceptibilities. Jim Bob told me this morning he's off his thyroid meds over the last year. He's no longer in AFib. He's gone from 375 pounds down to 318, and he's headed downhill in weight, but headed uphill in health very rapidly. Because he's taken my guidance. And we need more doctors like that. We don't need more doctors at the bottom of the cliff mopping up the messes. We need more doctors who are willing to go up top to where the people are getting sick and the reasons they are susceptible, and help me build a guardrail to stop people from going over the cliff. And that's what we did for Jim Bob. Y'all, I love you all. Please share this. Please. Pretty please? All right. Love you all. What was my usual saying? I don't know, I forgot it. Share the truth. Don't just like it. It's the only way we save lives. I'm the Wild Doc.